you're like a lot of digital organizations, you probably have a pretty strong small dollar donor program that's fueled by petitions and advocacy work where you're really turning in these activists into small dollar donors as a result of campaigns you're running. But one thing we're often not talking about with small dollar donors is the donor retention. In fact, the 2018 M&R benchmark study found that the average online donor retention for a lot of digital first organizations was hovering at around 38%. So that means there's definitely some room for improvement. And it also means that your organization could be leaving a lot of money on the table from small dollar donors. So let's talk about some strategies to change this. I'm always interested in this conversation around donor retention because I think it's a really important and very valuable, frankly, conversation for organizations to be having. And even if your organization has a strong list growth and acquisition program, having a stronger and better donor retention rate means that you're leaving less money on the table. And for some organizations, that means thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional fundraising revenue each year. So today I want to share 4 strategies for you to help you think about donor retention a little differently and donor stewardship differently for your small dollar digital donors. So let's get into them. The first strategy I want to talk about is segmenting your donor stewardship by new donor versus returning donor. And there's one very important reason why I think this is an important segmentation for organizations to use during donor follow-up. And that's because donor attrition is the lowest among new and first-time online donors. In fact, the 2018 M&R benchmark study found that new online donors were attritioning at 25%, so even lower than the average that we look at for all online donors. So if this is a problem for your organization where maybe it's kind of a crack in the bucket, so to speak, and a real issue with retaining donors, this is one key area to look at. What can we do better to keep new donors, to get them to make that second gift? Because once they make that second small dollar gift, the retention rate spikes significantly and we have a better chance of retaining them even longer. So a couple of things I would think about with new versus returning donors is what can you do to really make it a great experience for donors? How can you kind of personalize the experience for them, whether it's kind of customize and copy in your thank you emails or on your donation page if possible. I think little things like that can make a difference in just recognizing the type of relationship your donors have with your organization and hopefully making that connection a little bit more stable. The second strategy I want to talk about is making your thank you email count. This is such an important piece for digital donor stewardship, especially when we're talking about the types of touch points donors have with your organization. The thank you email is probably the first one that they have. And so it's really important to think about what can we do to make that a great experience for them that really, recognizes the importance of them making a gift and joining your movement. So interestingly, the 2018 Global Giving Trends report found that about 70% of donors prefer to receive a thank you email over other types of thank yous, such as a text or social message. So it's still a really good idea to be sending out a thank you email, but I want to say it should be more than just a transactional receipt. We really want to make sure that we can speak to donors' values and identity that align with our organization to reinforce that kind of story of us and story of self, to help donors really see themselves in our cause and see that they're a valuable and vital part of the movement. This third strategy I want to share with you is to really implement consistent and meaningful report back mechanisms. Now, there's a lot of things that we can do in helping donors really understand the impact of their giving and the importance of it, and hopefully that leads them to coming back time and time again to donate to our organizations. And one of the things that I think we can take from more of the traditional nonprofit world is this idea of really reporting back impact and connecting donors to that impact. Penelope Burke's research in donor-centered fundraising always cites that there's 2 things that donors around North America look for from organizations that they donate to, specifically 501c3s, is that they want to know how the gift was used and what impact it had. And I think we can bring that into small dollar donor stewardship as well. So there's lots of things you could do here, whether it's celebrating victories, milestones, or progress, just keeping donors up to date in meaningful ways and really connecting the dots that because of their donation, because of their support, this was possible. The more we can draw that line and connect those things, the more we help donors see that they were really a vital part of making something happen. And it doesn't just have to be an email report back. There's lots of other creative things you can do to take your relationship with small dollar donors beyond the email. You could host town calls or a live call or live video to do those report backs and interact with your donors in a slightly different channel. So the fourth and final strategy I want to share with you is to ask your donors for feedback and input. Now, I think this is a little bit more of an advanced strategy for donor stewardship, but I think it's a really important thing to think about because the more we can get feedback from our donors, the more we can figure out how to best steward them and how to build relationships with them and hopefully retain them for years and years to come. So one of the best ways to ask for feedback and to kind of develop this mechanism within our organization is to implement donor surveys and regularly review that information and try to figure out what, if anything, we want to bring into our stewardship programs. So one easy thing you could start with is with your new donors as a part of their thank you email, the first thing you send to them, or maybe in a second follow-up email a few days after their donation, is to send them a short survey. It doesn't have to be long, just a couple of questions to understand why they donated, and now that they're a donor, what they hope to get out of their relationship with your organization. Would they like special updates? Do they want to see things on social media from you that they may not otherwise see? Anything like that, where you can kind of get that information and that insight to help you figure out what kind of content and touch points you can have with those donors to make the relationship work and make it really meaningful for them. And even for your returning donors who've been around for a long time, I think this is still a really valuable question to be asking and valuable feedback to be seeking because it will help you become a much savvier organization in terms of how you're fundraising and what you're doing to retain those donors over the long haul. I hope these 4 strategies give you and your organization some food for thought. Donor stewardship is a big conversation to be having, and I think specifically when we talk about small dollar donor programs, this is a really valuable thing to be thinking about so that you can continue to grow your donor program, not just to continue to have small dollar donors in place, but also to build those relationships up so that you may have sustaining monthly donors, mid-level donors, or even major level donors as a result of the relationships you're building. So lots of value to be had in investing in this kind of work and really figuring out what you can do to increase donor retention at your organization. Thanks so much for joining me for this video about donor stewardship. If you've enjoyed it and would like more weekly tips on fundraising and communications, be sure to hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of this video.